Anime has a tendency to take a rather pure approach to relationships. So often in rom-coms we get the will they want they set up for the couple to be, even half the time they don't end up being a couple by the end of the show. When they end up becoming a couple, they can be so uncomfortable around each other and it just becomes unbearable. Both characters are terrified of the idea of seeing the other naked or kissing or holding hands, and it's so chaste that it's really tough to believe that these are real human beings. That's not Scum's Wish. Scum's Wish starts off with the two leads kissing and later removing articles of clothing. To be slightly hyperbolic, it's almost hentai in comparison to what we often get from anime. Though it's nothing we haven't seen in the past, it's just very rare, it feels like. And for Western viewers, it's really nothing you don't see on basic cable television. A realistic couple isn't the only reason to praise Scum's Wish, though. I really like that title, actually. Having just come off of a show that I hated the title of, Scum's Wish is just straight to the point and has that bit of self-deprecation that fits my style. But yes, besides those two reasons, Scum's Wish is actually off to a pretty good start. Now, its setup is pretty straightforward. It's, again, nothing you wouldn't really get out of a rom-com. The two main characters are high schoolers, one being Hana, the girl who has a crush on her homeroom teacher, Narumi, who she's known since she was very young and has been a family friend of her, and she started looking up to as a older brother, but eventually realized that those feelings were more romantic. Then there's Mugi, the boy, who has a crush on the music teacher who was also his tutor during his middle school days. But the trouble for Mugi and Hana is that these two teachers clearly have feelings for each other. Of course, there's also the issue of students and teachers dating that would be problematic to say the least. Now, if you're familiar with the more inner workings of the anime industry, then you know that the Noitamata block that Scum's Wish airs on is more of a late night block that has had shows like Ping Pong, Terror in Resonance, and Psycho-Pass air on it, along with things like Your Lie in April. They try to go for a little bit more of an adult audience. Scum's Wish obviously falls into this block for the sexual content, but it also does take more of a mature approach to relationships than we typically see from anime like this. One of the first things that really set it apart after the fact of the more explicit content was the directorial flares, the cinematography, the art style of certain aspects. Anime of this genre, they tend to have more reserved visuals where it's not highly animated, it's not an action show, so they don't need flashy visuals. They more so just go for, this would look good as a still picture. And that's the case here with Scum's Wish, but it does a few little flourishes here and there. One of the first things I noticed was the manga dotting to the backgrounds and some of the character designs. It's used very sparingly though, and I hope that they do employ it a bit more in the future, more thoughtfully. There are two major highlights though, the first being the manga transition panels. And the reason I love these is because they do such a good job of just filling in a ton of information immediately, rather than having just take a still and just try to fit as much as you can into that one still. And this can be an issue for people watching things via subs because you're trying to pay attention to the subs and read them, and when they're trying to overload a single frame with so much information, you don't know when you can look away. But with these manga panel transitions, they pop in and they're in there for maybe a few seconds, and you can just glance at them and get what they're going for immediately. You can see the information, the visual information that they are trying to provide, and just get back to the subs. And just in general, it can be used cleverly. So, like, say someone's talking in a room, and there's another person approaching down the hallway. In any other anime, that would be a cut, and they would have to focus on the person in the hallway and then jump back to the person in the room. But with this manga panel transition, you can still have a strong focus on that original subject while showing the new subject approaching. The other highlight takes place when Mugi and Hana start getting handsy for the first time, and Mugi tells Hana to just pretend that I'm him, pretend that I'm the homeroom teacher that you have a crush on. And so she does, and when this happens, the show takes on a very painterly, highly detailed aesthetic. And it looks a lot like a manga cover or a light novel cover. It's a super, super gorgeous visual. And the whole point of that is to really sell the idea that this fantasy is far more beautiful to Hana than her real life. The real life that we see portrayed via usual anime aesthetic. And it's really nice to see anime that it doesn't have like crazy fucking visuals. It's a good looking show in the way that we've seen a lot of other anime of this sort look. But to have those flares here and there, it helps to separate it. It helps to give it more personality and feel like somebody's actually thinking, well, this is where I want to take the show in my vision, rather than this is where I want to take the show in a way that I think is appealing to a broad audience. These positive vibes I had sort of die off a little bit in the second episode. It certainly goes in a direction I wish it hadn't in some regards. In episode 2, we were introduced to Mocha, who is the highly energetic, accusatory, somewhat tsundere a bit character who's just... she's so annoyingly energetic that I kind of wish that a plane engine would fall out of the sky and crush her, like the beginning of Donnie Darko. The problem is, in the initial episode, the show sets itself up as this very dramatic sort of experience, and then Mocha comes along and just undercuts that. She fits in other anime. She does not fit here. And I'm happy she's only in it for a brief period, but it seems like she's going to continue to be in the show, unfortunately. She's not a character you love to hate like a Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones. She's just a character that I hate because she takes the show in a direction I wish it wouldn't go. And those novel stylistic touches, they don't pop up as much. I don't remember seeing any of the manga dotting or the sort of manga cover visual at all. And that's a little disappointing because that helped give the show a distinct personality. And without it, it is a good looking show like I've said, but it's just a good looking show in the way that we've seen other anime be. All that said, it is still mostly, even through that second episode that is a little weaker, it is still mostly what I've enjoyed about the first episode, that being the melodrama, the sort of novel visual aesthetics that it has going on, because the transitions are still there in episode 2, and they're still there in the same effective manner that they were in the first. It continues to be a more mature approach to relationships than we typically see. I know I'm not going to have to wait until the last fucking episode to see the two characters finally show some sort of physical affection for each other. That's already happened. That gets rid of one of my biggest issues with rom-com anime to begin with, or romantic anime of any sort. It's why I like things like Toradora, where there's that initial bit where it's a will they won't they sort of situation, but eventually they do, and it takes it quite far in that direction to the point where we see them being married. Scum's Wish doesn't waste time with that bullshit. We don't need another anime where these two characters never end up even kissing each other. It's not necessary. And if you don't like melodrama, I wouldn't blame you for not wanting to watch this. It's pretty strong in that regard, especially in the first episode. They make the situation rather fucking dire. I'm a fan of melodrama, so I have no issue there, but I don't blame people who aren't interested in that style of storytelling, looking at Scum's Wish and being like, that's not for me. There's been a topic of conversation about this season having not a whole lot to watch, and it may not have 10 good shows or 10 watchable shows, but of the half a dozen or so that I have tried to watch, I've enjoyed every one except for that other show I've already discussed on this channel. Scum's Wish is an enjoyable sort of romance. It does enough to set itself apart. It does enough so that I don't feel like I'm wasting my time watching it. I'm going to continue this because through 2 episodes, I don't know that it'll be phenomenal, but I get the feeling that I'm going to enjoy this entire experience. As always, like, subscribe, all that nonsense. It is much appreciated, and you can follow me on Twitter @wordsmaybe, same thing as my YouTube title.